Dan, one of the biggest conversations following the Super Bowl, apart from the game, is the halftime show. It got lots of reaction, including from you. Talk about it.
Yeah, well, I was over at a friend's house with a bunch of people, and my kids were there. Thankfully, most of them were off playing when the halftime show popped on. But my daughter happened to be in the room, and so I'm watching this thing unfold. And as many of you are aware by now, it was quite provocative. Jennifer Lopez and Shakira were scantily clad, and there were stripper poles and a lot of writhing around, very provocative, sensual type stuff. And, obviously, as a Christian family, I don't want to shield my kids from the world, but at the same time, we try not to make a habit of consuming content that's edgy and aggressive like that too often. So I was kind of put in this awkward position, where this happened to come on, and I was dealing with it as a parent. So I kind of wrote an op-ed on FaithWire to express sort of my feelings of this performance and kind of what it was like as a dad going through that, and what I wanted to tell my daughter. We just sort of talked, just like you normally would with other friends, and I used it as an opportunity to sort of point out some things in a simple way, and the point got across. And she actually, thankfully, by the grace of God, was appalled by it. So parenting win, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say so. Parenting victory. It's a good way to talk about it. Briefly, what did you say in your op-ed?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to tell my daughter, and that was what I wrote about, the things that I wanted her to sort of get from this. And I'll go through the couple. There were three kind of main points, and one of them was flaunting your body is not edgy or cool. That is something that society and particular entertainment pushes so much that, wow, it's so edgy that she went out there with no clothes on practically. And it's like, well, this has been done a million times before. It's actually boring. It's tired, and it's not cool at all. It actually is degrading yourself. And so for, appealing to the lowest common denominator, and you treat yourself like an object. And that was the second point, that you are not an object. You are made with worth. You're given your worth from God. And so your worth doesn't come from your sexuality and how cool you are and all of those sorts of things. So I talked about that, and also where your true worth comes from. We look for that in so many different places. People are always constantly trying to find themselves, and really the only place you're going to find your true worth is when you look to God, and that's the only thing that actually gives us worth, is the fact that we were made by God in His image, the Imago Dei. So that's where our worth comes from. And if we don't understand that, we don't understand anything about ourselves, and we end up looking for it in all the wrong places, like you saw at that halftime show.
Why do you think this could be considered a mixed message from the world when it comes to valuing women?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're seeing the Me Too movement right now, right? And this is a movement that is trying to teach people that, hey, we shouldn't be treating women poorly. We shouldn't be sexually harassing and all these things that are sometimes commonplace in society. And yet, on the other hand, that message is going out, and then in a lot of ways, that's a great message. And but then on the other hand, you're saying, like, look at me as a sex object. And so when you do things like what J-Lo and Shakira did, you are training people that, hey, you want them to look at you that way. You want them to be sexually aroused by the things you're doing. And by default, you're telling them to treat you like an object for their own personal, gratification. And so those two messages cannot coexist at the same time. They're actually like magnets. They don't coexist. They just can't. And so if you really do value the Me Too movement, and you really do value women, you wouldn't be excited about them behaving in that way.
All right. Well, tell us what's coming up on Faith versus Culture.
We're going to dive into this topic a little bit more, Mark. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl halftime show and this idea about sexuality and empowerment. Like, is it really empowering or is it not? And so we're going to expand on some of the things that we just talked about right here.
Okay. Dan Andros with FaithWire.com. Thanks as always for your insights, sir. We appreciate it.